The Prince realised very quickly it wasn't really him the people had turned out to see.
I've come to the conclusion that really it would have been far easier to have had two wives. To have covered both sides of the street. And I could have walked down the middle, directing the operation.
The forecourt of the Opera House on a bright autumn day. Huge crowds and impressive music from the Sydney School Symphonic Wind Ensemble. The high school dancers were pretty impressive too. Though the Prince found them a shade embarrassing. And the Princess's expression was rather harder to read. Afterwards, the great crowd sang the national song, Advance Australia Fair. The Princess knew some of the words. Her husband, like many Australians, needed prompting from the programme. The Prince made 5 speeches in 2 days in New South Wales. They're very much into speeches here. His theme in all of them was his delight in introducing his wife and son to his old and valued Australian friends.
Old because it is now 17 years, believe it or not, since I first set foot as a hesitant Pom. Now I am returning with my wife and my son. And it is indeed as if I were introducing them to old friends. My wife has been enveloped by warmth and affection since arriving in the red heart of this great continent. And now she is experiencing the sort of welcome that this famous city can bestow on its visitors.
That night, there was a charity ball at one of the big hotels, and the Princess demonstrated that she is unique among royals in her capacity to generate a pop star-style welcome. This was the event in the Sydney social calendar. If you weren't invited to this one, you were an outcast, and people were prepared to pay up to $300 to avoid that fate. For the first time, the Prince allowed television cameras in to watch him dancing, which was nice. But what we didn't know was that he was about to stage his own royal version of Come Dancing. Then the social set moved in, determined to have a chat. The Princess was embarrassed, but by now the couple were a sitting target. With this sort of crowd, Dame Edna Everage had to be down there somewhere. The next day in Newcastle, New South Wales' second city, they once again displayed their private affection in a public place. And when the very small children performed their exercises to music, the tunes were so catchy they had to join in. There were 43,000 children in this stadium, and the Prince decided to tell a few jokes. Unfortunately, one of them, about bringing up Prince William on warm milk and kangaroo meat, got him into trouble. So much so, he had to put the record straight later.
But you won't believe it, but ever since then, we have been deluged with letters, telegrams, and telephone calls saying, "How dare you bring up your child on minced kangaroo?" So I just wanted to put the record straight that we don't feed him on minced kangaroo. I was attempting a joke. One thing I thought Australians have is a sense of humor, but anyway. In fact, we bring him up on grass and beer.
In this next sequence, watch the princess's face.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last time I was here was 2 years ago, in 1981, shortly before we were married. And at that time, everybody was saying, "Good luck, and I hope everything goes well, and how lucky you are to be engaged to such a lovely lady." And my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many, many messages. It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
The theme of this second week has really been the princess's rapidly growing popularity. There's been plenty of physical contact, and the children now seem to have rewritten the rules of the walkabout, or at least made it clear that the rules don't apply to them. They can go anywhere. Sometimes they hunt in packs, zeroing in on the target with their bouquets. The end product is always the same, masses and masses of flowers. Some are passed on to the lady in waiting, some to a policewoman. By the end of the day, they will find their way to local hospitals. Of course, for the very young, it's all a bit bewildering. You've got to attract her attention, they spin you round, you've got to make the delivery, you've got to remember where to run back to. It's not easy. And there are times when it's all just too much. And only a good weep will provide comfort. Mind you, it was quite nice when that princess lady said, "Agony over."
Agony over.
Australians are obsessively keen on keeping fit, regardless of age or self-consciousness. Or as the Prince's expression has it, what's going on here? They passed on to one of the showpieces of this suburban Adelaide community centre. Rock climbing, or rather brick climbing, which produced the royal exercise of neck craning. These children playing table tennis are all immigrants from Kampuchea who settled here after the Vietnamese invasion. Their game taught the princess horizontal eye movements, echoed by the prince's vertical eye movements. The swimming pool here has been specially designed for disabled people, and the princess seemed to be preparing for a racing dive as she talked to them. All this shows that Australians are sports mad. This afternoon, our sporting prince, wearing number 4, played polo for the second time at Warwick Farm, just outside Sydney. The ground was dry and fairly hard. His best chance for a goal came when he swooped from his position at back and hit a first-time shot. It went just wide. The press were at the ready, and they didn't have long to wait.
He can't get to it either, and Ballard now with a chance. Can't really get the run of it. Prince Charles just exiting quietly. I wonder if someone could please open the gates of Warwick Farm, because there's going to be a stampede of 2,000 photographers all to rush out, so just be careful you don't get trampled in the dust.
At the end, the prince had no doubt why he came off, as he explained in his speech of thanks.
And particularly to those who were brave enough to play on my side, which is dangerous enough. Those who gave us a wonderful opposition, knocked me off my horse, the accent on knocked off, and also for those people who think that I just fall off all the time.
Things were more successful earlier in the week at Port Pirie in South Australia for a Royal Sports Day. In this country, the competitive spirit is encouraged early.
Finally,
The Prince and Princess were here to present the prizes. And the last winner calmly asked the Prince for a kiss. The Prince first looked startled, then said, "Oh, come on. I don't mind," said the Princess, and so it came about. Followed by a handshake to show there were no hard feelings. The couple giggled together about the incident, but a 16-year-old school captain suddenly found she'd become a star.
Oh, he said, well, good
Oh,
luck.
yeah,
Oh, I see.
okay.
So I looked at Diana and said, well,
She said, oh, go on.
Oh, well, she didn't actually say go on, she said like that.
Oh,
I
no,
would
did.
say,
How long did it take you to pluck up the nerve to do that?
oh, well, I was thinking about it and I thought, oh, they won't mind.
had you decided about it today, this morning, yesterday, last week, when?
Probably about 1 second before I was going to leave that
Oh, I
platform
see.
up
It was
there.
very spontaneous.
What did they
I
say
thought he
afterwards?
looked so nice and...
You're a personality.
We had been in Adelaide 10 days earlier when the Prince and Princess came to see the devastation caused by the bushfires, but there hadn't been time to stop at every village. The crowds had come out onto the road and halted the motorcade on the way to catch a plane, but for them this wasn't enough, and there was a lot of disappointment. Especially for this little girl left crying by the roadside. But happy endings are what royal tours are about, and so the same little girl found herself in the town hall bearing gifts of a woolly chicken and flowers. But why give presents?
Because I loved her.
What did she say when you gave her the flowers?
She said thank you.
Did she say thank you, didn't she?
Yes.
She said, "I love you, Princess Diana," and then she handed her the little chicken which we'd bought for Prince William, and she said, "This is for Prince Charles." Princess Diana smiled and just said, "I think you've made a mistake. I think you mean Prince William."
Investitures like this one in Perth are rarely seen on television. Indeed, the Buckingham Palace version of this scene has never been filmed. Odd, really, because it is a panoply of monarchy in action, rewarding its subjects. And one of the subjects here is familiar enough in Britain.
Mr. Rodney William Marsh, for service and achievement in Australian cricket.
Rod Marsh, terroriser of England, one of the greatest wicket-keepers of all time. They all seem to use the most peculiar muzak, as if the ceremonial required some sort of sweetening. But it is the ceremonial itself which has an added significance in Australia. The heir to the throne, as representative of the sovereign, is exercising the power of the monarchy in a land beyond the United Kingdom. This infuriates Republicans in Australia. The Prince, lean and fit, is off for a swim, the press trotting in attendance along the Perth beach. The dive-in was a good one, though surfacing reveals that the famous bald spot is on the spread, not that he seems to bother. A large lady decided to leave, and the extra water now available unceremoniously dumped the Prince. "Well done," said an aide for no apparent reason. While this was going on, the Princess had set off on her first solo engagement overseas. Her husband's shield blacked out on the rolls. The destination was Fremantle, where the hospital has a wing named after her. The Princess appeared to be sitting on the wrong side of the car, but she didn't make any other mistakes, though here they still cheer her as Lady Diana.
3 cheers for Lady Di! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
And she was rapidly into mass handshaking. a pursuit she continued in Perth when she rejoined her husband. And he it was who had to dissuade her from overdoing it, knowing there was another 100 yards to go yet. This lunchtime walkabout was thought by the palace people to be the best to date. There were 10,000 people held only by a single rope, and that allowed plenty of freedom, like the freedom to stroll over for a handshake. Eventually, the princess was a dot of purple in the vast throng, and the policewomen carried away the spoils. That afternoon, there was a garden party with all Perth society there, displaying hats, more hats, a bit of tie-dyeing, and accessories. Being permitted this sort of entrance could be said to constitute an unfair advantage. But no one in Australia these past 3 weeks would argue against the fact that the princess has set a lead in fashion which is probably going to be copied all over the world in the next few months. She brought with her a wardrobe officially described as vast, and of the 20 dresses to date, she has worn only 3 things before. There was this pink outfit in Canberra, first seen at Waterloo Station on the honeymoon. This, seen on a platform in Sydney, started on a settee in Buckingham Palace. And what we saw on a launch in Hobart, we first saw in a carriage at Ascot. When it rains in Perth, you feel you ought to redefine the meaning of the word. But the children didn't seem to mind as they waited at the airport for the royals to leave for Bunbury, 100 miles to the south. The policeman didn't even seem to notice. The reward for sitting it out was a few words from a raincoat and brolly princess. And she spoke to each damp child. At Bunbury, the rain had held off, and the children waited to hear the words of the prince. But the wind blew away a page of his script, and there was a word not intended for their ears.
I had one of the Granny Smith apples thrown into the car after me as we drove here from the airport.
What he said was, "God, where's my bloody bit of paper?" He was thrown for a moment, but pressed on, straight-faced, to read a Victorian homily on the evils of
Swearing is contemptible and foolish.
After the speech, the children swarmed, perhaps thinking he'd say that word again. The Land Rover made its stately progress around the stadium, allowing all the 13,000 children a view. They, in turn, kept station, a fair feat of discipline. The children who'd brought flowers lobbed them at the car with enviable accuracy. Then they just pelted the couple. But there are times when no amount of running will get you there in time. Of course, children have again dominated the week, and even when playing in a perfectly ordinary school band, they've managed to indicate their own individuality. Twice over here. When they've not been painting their hair, they've been putting funny things on top of it. They wore hats of welcome. They displayed imploring posters, misspelt Easter cards, and other banners. Someone seems to have run a course here teaching children to open and close car doors. If you do it really well, people applaud. Then there were the gifts, a bush hat with corks for the prince, a bag of peanuts for the princess, an Easter egg for a policewoman, and an Easter rabbit for Prince William. At the pub in Woomagama, they have other preoccupations. The prince hasn't been in to what is presently his local for a drink, and it worries them. Neither has the prince taken up membership of the club named after one of comedian Paul Hogan's characters.
There's your official membership card. Official initiation. Now the official chant is Fosters, Fosters, Fosters.
Fosters, Fosters, Fosters.
Hooray!
This is membership card number 500, reserved for the prince. And there's an old school friend waiting here too.
Yeah, well, been coming down to the bar a bit lately and hoping that Charlie might come in. Oh, well, the old mate Flavers, as we used to call him. But hasn't showed up as yet. We're all sort of, hoping to drop in and have a drink with us and eventually get him signed up to the Arthur Club and have a drink with us. And anyway, I suppose I better have another one while I'm waiting.
This morning, the couple were at church at St Paul's Holbrook, a small village near Woomagama, where the prince read the lesson. Sunday or not, there was work to do after the service and children to talk to. Outside, they found the tiny population had grown 100-fold, and one solution seemed to be for both to shake as many hands as possible. Next week, the prince and princess go to Queensland and Victoria, and in Melbourne will experience the extraordinary mixture of races which blends together with the English, the Lithuanians, the Jews, the Maltese and the Italians, all producing their own version of Advanced Australia Fair.
Queensland Sunshine Coast, the temperature in the high 80s, but it's officially late autumn, so there's no one on the beach. The tall buildings of Brisbane make it hard to remember that the city was founded by convicts rejected by Sydney. In the city this week, 100,000 people turned out for the royal couple. The local military band had never had an audience like this. Most of the people were concentrated in a shopping mall. They left a very narrow walkway for the prince and princess. It wasn't really safe. Baby's bibs were gratefully received. Then a carrier bag for the presents, sensibly checked before use. They were advised to keep moving. And they did so as the crowd pressed even closer. An element of potential chaos was obvious. Police restrained people as best they could, but some individuals tried to break through. For some, the heat and the pressure were too great. There was fainting and there was collapse.
Right, boys, we've got some water here.
What had happened was that there were too few police, too few barriers. An open car drive was abandoned as impracticable. They decided to remain on foot all the way to the town hall. But the result was that the biggest walkabout had become the quickest. Gratefully, they reached the town hall steps. Behind them came a tidal river of people. This crowd made such an impression on the prince that he mentioned it later at an old folks' home when he was asked if he was feeling all right.
Yes, thank you very much. I think so. I may collapse at the edge of this. Well, it's very nice of you. I'm sorry I haven't disturbed your lives too much.
We're happy.
And which block do you live in?
Oh, this is just new.
It's new?
Oh, this is all new.
Is it? What do you think of the place?
Lovely. Don't you like it, sir?
Not bad at all. I reserve myself a place.
At a Queensland state reception that evening, he had put the memory behind him and put on his wit with his dinner jacket.
On this occasion, of course, it's doubly enjoyable as far as I'm concerned to bring my wife with me and to introduce her to all of you and to let her see just what a state Queensland is. Not in what a state, but what a state.
Whirling fans, try as they might, cannot disperse the sharp smell of ginger, as we discovered the next day on a tour of Queensland's more exotic agricultural establishments. This is Australia's only ginger factory. Actually, they don't like the stuff much, and most of it goes for export to the Far East. The Prince was told that the ginger root can be preserved, crystallized, covered in chocolate, or turned into ginger beer. The Princess was drawn into colour coordination. Her dress just happened to match the raw ginger. Next, the nutmobile, shaped approximately like the local macadamia nut. The Prince and Princess, faintly embarrassed, travelled in a royal nut. There was some laughter as the nutmobile made its rather ludicrous way downhill, and people said unkind things about rolling hamburgers. Mind you, they are useful as flour bins, though fairly miserable to follow if you're a security man. By the end of the journey, the Prince was looking equally miserable. He muttered that once was enough, thank you, and he'd never go in the thing again. The nutmobile did not win the royal seal of approval. The world's largest plastic pineapple was viewed with rather more favour. This was at the Sunshine Plantation, a vast acreage of tropical fruits created by a man who used to run a roadside shack selling pineapples. The annual value of the plantation's produce is now nearly £400 million. 1 million tourists a year ride behind the converted sugarcane engine as it chugs slowly through the fields of avocado, guava, passion fruit, banana and cane. Now 2 more tourists were added to the tally. And the old engine pulled slowly up the hill and past the duck pond. More normal work was resumed in Victoria for the planned visit to the Altona housing estate near Melbourne, a very British-looking estate. The house of Mrs. Tessa MacDonald was chosen for inspection by the Prince and Princess because she and her husband Hugh and their 3 children are considered a typical family. The cleaning went ahead with help from the elder daughter Kelly, who is 10.
Getting your work done there, madam?
On the day, the stiffer dog was out, posing problems for the McDonald's pets.
I've got the cats out here because I've got the dogs in there.
Yeah, we'll just stand to the side here.
Local boys peered through the police car windows, seeing how the visitors were to be protected. Hugh MacDonald said the security men noticed everything unwanted was pushed into cupboards.
And they said that if Lady Diane comes, Princess Diane comes in and says, oh, you've got a lot of cupboard space, and opens up one of the cupboards, well, we won't know what to do then.
My head's just spinning. I'm just in so many different worlds at the moment. I just can't even concentrate.
The estate has a lot of British immigrants, or not to put too fine a point on it, a lot of Poms. So, of course, they organised a street party for the occasion.
The orange juice?
Hugh opted to wear a tie at the last minute, and so at the appointed time, the visitors approached the garden gate of number 9 Box Court. The 2 couples went inside. Hugh MacDonald describes his reaction.
I said, I really think you're a lovely couple. Something like that. I really did, because you could see that they're really together,
happy together.
And they really are happy people. And the fact that they were so happy, you could feel that they were happy. It seemed like they were really happy to be doing what they were doing, like it wasn't just another chore.
Melbourne still has trams, beloved of many, including the Prince, as a symbol of the city. But they're grubby things, so the new precinct to be opened had to be hosed down. The police band played the tune we've waited a month to hear. Princess faced her biggest and warmest crowd in Australia. They stashed away the flowers in a car boot, and the Prince quoted a writer on the famous rivalry between Melbourne and Sydney.
The stereotype, he said, beloved by most Melburnians, is that Sydney is noisy, garish, untidy, pushing, insincere, brash, rather delinquent, and on the whole untrustworthy. I hasten to add that I was not the writer. I have great pleasure in declaring this mall open, and as Anthony Trollope said when he visited here in 1872, magnificent though Melbourne might be, there's no street in it that's finished. But at least this one is, and we, both of us, have great pleasure, as I say, in declaring it open and trusting that nobody gets run down by the trams which still operate here.
At the moment, the tram lines are immediately below the plaque he unveiled, so no one knows what they're going to do with it yet. The cenotaph in Auckland, at sunrise on the day they call Anzac Day.
The footsteps that you hear are the marching feet of the veterans of the great wars who are arriving at the cenotaph.
Think of the comrades who, then and since, fought for freedom on land, sea, and in the air, but did not return. As the dawn is even now about to pierce the night, so let their memory inspire us to work for the coming of new light into the dark places of the world.
Anzac Day is a day of mourning like our Remembrance Sunday, but perhaps more intensely felt. It began by commemorating Gallipoli, the 7-month-long battle in 1915 in which thousands of New Zealanders and Australians were killed.
Down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
For the old soldiers of Gallipoli, the presence of royalty had made this an extraordinary Anzac Day. Memories stirred of that battle long ago.
I caught it 3 times during the war, but still I'm lucky to be where I am.
How many of your units survived? How many of your units survived?
Well, as far as I know, there was only about 4 of us.
Out of how many?
But, of course, there may have been some more that were wounded and taken somewhere else. I don't know.
What do you think about the royal couple being here today? What do you think about the royal couple being here today, Prince and Princess?
Wonderful. Great. They're doing a wonderful job. They're so well liked. There's no false pride among us.
It rained on all but 2 days of the visit to New Zealand, and when it wasn't raining, it was promising to. In Christchurch, the rain actually held off for a while, but the Princess's hat, last seen much bedraggled on a very wet tour of Wales, tempted Providence. Knowing nothing of this, schoolgirls set up a high chant. The Prince heard it first and directed a suitable response. A few moments later, down came the rain again, and up went the brollies. The Prince was in uniform because he was on his way to a Royal New Zealand Air Force base where the weather had been officially declared fine. Their display would go ahead. In the briefing room, they proved a movie cliché, synchronizing their watches.
Okay. Next time in 50 seconds will be 9:44. 45 seconds. So while we're waiting for it, let's make sure we have a good display. It's a royal display.
Just make sure it's a beauty. It's not push-ala. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now.
Flight Lieutenant Gavin House, who was to fly solo aerobatics in a 1950s Strike Master trainer converted from prop to jet, said he did it for self-satisfaction. The Princess looked faintly apprehensive, even without knowing that the flight lieutenant was about to stall dive his aircraft by switching the engine off at the top of the climb. Before a backdrop of treasured museum pieces, the couple talked to Air Force families. Would the Prince like to have flown in the display?
Well, I would quite, yes. I haven't done it for such a long time that I think all the G-forces would have finished me off. My eyeballs would have been hanging out.
The banner asked a polite question, to which the response was equally polite and immediate.
Thank you very much.
How did you enjoy your stay here? How's your baby?
Very well.
When you wanted to get...
Sorry, you haven't had better weather.
Got cold head. Have a heavy holiday. Have a heavy holiday. You deserve it.
How's Willie was the popular question.
How's what? He's in wonderful. Very dangerous. He knocks everything off. Very nice to meet you.
After 6 weeks of practice, the Princess was ready to agree to any reasonable request.
Give us a wave! Give us a wave! Thank you! Beautiful!
Waitangi is where, in 1840, Britain and the Maoris signed the treaty which gave the nation of New Zealand her birth certificate. In the meeting house, Mr. Hector Busby, captain of the Great War Canoe, was preparing for the royal visit.
I forgot to bring my deodorant.
After grace, breakfast for the warriors. A lady elder exercised a touch of Maori discipline.
All I want to say is, excuse me, Missy, one day you will learn that if you are going to be any good at culture, you listen while other people are talking.
Right, let's go again. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
But there were difficulties. The tide had stranded the canoe. At last, it was time to board and get the feel of the rush flooring. They sailed and headed straight for the bridge. Right hand down on the paddles saved the day. The Princess was to have been carried on board, which is normal practice, but the crew couldn't agree who was to have the honour. The couple settled in as if this was an everyday form of transport. Not very good swimming in a hat, said the Princess. So off across the bay went the great war canoe. The swell from other boats was making the going tricky. The canoe began to rock alarmingly. It was time to force a smile and think of other things like waving. At the landing stage, the water was so shallow, half the crew had to hop ashore and haul in the canoe. But getting off proved a little easier than getting on. And Captain Busby, deodorant or not, was heartily thanked. The high point of the New Zealand tour had gone off well.
Did you get horrible great ants up here too?
Yeah.
Did you get bull ants?
Yeah.
Jumper ants? Horrible things. When I was out of school, I was used to get eaten by those beastly things. But you're probably immune to them now, aren't you? They don't eat Boy Scouts. Thank you.
Now for all of our students on air today, good morning, girls and boys.
Apart from kisses at set-piece events, the feeling of the tour was created by the Walkabouts. In cities, towns, villages, anywhere people were gathered together. The Prince is a master of the art form, and because of his experience, he realized very quickly it wasn't really him the people had turned out to see. So when the crowds cheered the arrival of the Princess, he was perfectly happy to take second place.
I haven't yet worked out a method of splitting my wife in half. She can do both sides.
By the time of the farewell banquet in Auckland, he'd pondered the problem and produced another idea.
And I've come to the conclusion that really it would have been far easier to have had two wives. To have covered both sides of the street. And I could have walked down the middle, directing the operation.
At that same banquet, he talked of memories of the tour and thanked some of the communities they'd visited.
But Tony, for being there while we drove through it. Upper Hutt, for not having changed a great deal since the last time I visited it. And Manukau, for the fire service display. That's another memory. Gisborne, for the best day we had on the entire visit. And for that incredibly moving Maori welcome. But above all, we shall remember all those people who have welcomed us, who have stood for hours in rain or sun. We can only hope that we've given them something back, that we've given something back to the many individuals in the crowds.
Yes.
But my wife has proved, apart from anything else, that she is as good as the next woman at the art of hongi. Both our noses will carry many memories of this particular tour to New Zealand. I dare say many other noses will bear the imprint of ours as well. But ladies and gentlemen, this evening I couldn't possibly stand here and speak without mentioning our small son, William. All we can say is that it has been the greatest possible joy and pleasure to have him with us during this visit. he does seem to have made quite an impression in the last 2 weeks. And everywhere we've been, people in the crowd have asked where he is and why he isn't with us and how he is and isn't he marvelous and so on, and how their children might not have done exactly the same thing if they had been put on a rug in front of a phalanx of cameras. But I hope that his presence here has helped to provide that family feeling, which I know my wife and I feel is so important.
The Prince's impressions of New Zealand. One of the nicest things about the tour has been their own public display of love and affection, like holding hands in front of 43,000 schoolchildren, like dancing before a large crowd and the cameras with rapt attention in each other. And even on an absurdly crowded floor, finding an opportunity for a quick private gesture. There was affection in the speeches too.
And I'm really pleased to be able to bring my wife on this occasion so that she can loyally watch her husband make a fool of himself. At that time, everybody was saying, good luck, and I hope everything goes well, and how lucky you are to be engaged to such a lovely lady. And my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many, many messages. It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
There was also that moment when his arm round her shoulder produced an unexpected result. But if they clearly cared for each other, they cared for other people too. For instance, Addington Raceway in Christchurch had planned an evening meeting and a dinner. The weather was appalling and the meeting was abandoned. It looked a pretty sad place. But rather than disappoint the dinner guests, the Prince and Princess decided to go and drive along the floodlit course past the empty grandstands as if nothing was amiss. Then they spread their sympathy around.
I just think I'm going to lose all this money tonight. It's not fair.
The staff of the royal household have had their organisational abilities and their flexibility severely tested in these 6 weeks. The Honourable Edward Dean, the Prince's private secretary, has been the planner and the diplomat. Mr. Francis Cornish, on the left, is the assistant private secretary. His task has been to cope with the day-to-day logistics and to handle the awkward moments, which happen surprisingly often, so that few people ever know they've happened at all.
Behind the crowd, well then.
Oh, I see, behind the crowd. Yeah. And then it goes up that way.
Well,
It's not an easy job. Superintendent John McLean, the Prince's personal detective, has the most nerve-wracking role, particularly during walkabouts when his boss is most exposed to danger. His whole body is in constant movement, bringing about the dance of the anxious policeman. Mr. Kevin Shanley, the Princess's hairdresser, looks on occasion almost as anxious. When the royal plane leaves, the other staff take over, or do when the jet noise is finished. The careful ferrying of the royal cars has to be undertaken. Gently over the tarmac glides the Daimler. The Rolls is already in place. A little careful reversing to bring the two expensive machines together, and then... Happily, that shunting caused no real damage. The organisation had won through again. In these 6 weeks, the Princess of Wales has probably become the world's most photographed woman. It must have been an ordeal, but she's rarely shown it. She's responded to adulation with modesty and spirit. The monarchy will be the benefactor. And there were, of course, the clothes, fashion with a completely individual flair. 50 outfits in 42 days.